Hello everyone, Tina here. I hope you're having a fantastic weekend. Thanks so much for stopping by. Today I have some inspiration to share with you with the Simon Says Stamp January card kit called So Much. We're going to make 10 cards, so we're going to jump in starting with the first card. I love these penguins. They are super duper cute. In the stamp set I took the small one. I'm going to stamp him 3 times. And then I'll just use my Copic markers to do a little shading on the inside of the little penguin's body and then his little bills. I did add some rosy cheeks to him also. Once we have all of our images colored in, super easy, I'm going to do a little bit of blending with my clear colorless blender. And then I'll take my scissors and we're just going to fussy cut each one of these little penguins out. Now I wasn't too concerned about the bottom portion of the penguins because they're going to be tucked inside of a little window, so I didn't bother coloring in or cutting out the bottom feet of those little guys. Okay, we're going to set those aside. Next, I'm going to be using a die from my stash. I've had this for a while and it creates little window flaps, little squares that have little rounded corners. I'm placing this to the left of my card panel here, and I'm going to take my paper trimmer and trim down a 1/2 inch off of this. Next I'll take my little penguins and we're going to do a little tucking. We're going to place them a little bit wonky, different wonkiness on each of the little windows. I'm going to secure them using a foam square. We'll add one more here in the middle. These guys are just adorable. I love them. Okay, this one we're not going to place wonky. We're going to go straight up and down with him. Okay, next we'll stamp our sentiment. I chose "Wanna Build a Snowman." Super cute. I'm going to stamp this in the lower right hand corner, just using some VersaFine Onyx black ink. After we have that done, we're going to be using the little pom-poms that came in the kit. I'm using the white ones today. I already pulled some out, and using a glue dot, I'm going to secure one pom-pom to each one of my penguin's hands, as if they're kind of doing a little snowball fight in those little windows. I was going to do a little pile, but then changed my mind and I thought that looks so simple but so cute. Once we have these put back, I'm going to be using I believe it's an Audrey blue cardstock that came in the kit. I just popped this panel up with some foam tape, and then we're going to place this directly on our card base that I scored and then cut down to an A2 size. For finishing touches, I'm going to use the glossy accents and dot the little eyes and then the little penguin bills, and that finishes off card number 1. Now the glossy accents that came in this month's kit, I set aside because I already had one of my own and I didn't want to open that one as I had another one. Okay, card number 2, I'm going to create a panel that's 4 inches by 5 1/4 with this pattern paper. I'm also going to take a piece of white cardstock and then cut out a panel that's 3 inches by 4 1/4. That's going to fit on the inside of my pattern paper there. I also cut down a 1/2 inch strip of the red and white pattern paper, and I wanted to use this beautiful cute little die. I'm cutting her out with gray cardstock. I'm just kind of figure out my placement on my panel, and I'll die cut her out. Now she's so neat because she has embossed detail too. While I was at it, I did die cut out a snowflake using a snowflake die from my stash. Now we're going to go ahead and stamp our sentiment. For this card, I chose "There's Snow One Like You." We're going to stamp it on the upper right of this panel. And again, I'll use my VersaFine Onyx black ink. Okay, we'll take this panel, flip it over, add some foam tape behind here, and we'll place this on our pattern paper. Lovely. Next, we're going to take this panel and place this on our A2 size card base. I'm going to use a white card base for this card. We'll just place that in the center. And then using foam squares, I will pop up my little girl, and then also I'll use a glue dot to secure my snowflake right next to her. And I did pull in a small red and white button, and then I topped it off with a bow I created with some white jute cord. For bells and whistles, I'm going to go in with some Ranger. These are red stickles, super sparkly, and there's little dots on that pattern paper. I just went over the dots on the pattern paper, and then I'm going to finish it off with some pretty pink posh sparkling clear sequins. And that finishes off card number 2. Okay, now for card number 3, we're going to make a penguin card using the largest penguin in the stamp set. And so I'll just take an acrylic block, place my penguin on there, and we're going to use the same VersaFine ink to stamp the igloo and our large little penguin. I did do a little shading on the igloo with my C1 marker, and then I did the same colors as I did with my smaller penguin in the earlier card. I just fussy cut them out, and now we get to build our background. Okay, I'm going to add a little sparkle. That's what I'm going to do. We've got to add some sparkle. So I'm going to use a little bit of my glue and go over the igloo. And then I'm going to use some Avery L coarse glitter. It's a real pretty iridescent. So it's going to be really subtle, but it's going to add a little sparkle. I'm just going to go over the igloo. And then I'll also add a little glue to my penguin. Just the lower portion of him. And then we'll add some more glitter there. And then while that's drying, I did cut out a snowbank with white cardstock, and then also with the blue pattern paper that came in this month's kit. I'm going to start off by adhering the blue snowbank directly to my card base, and I did lay down one of the tags that came in the kit also. I'm just positioning where I want it to go, and then any excess overhanging I'll just take my scissors and trim off. These I want directly adhered to my card base. And then next I'll take some anti-static powder. I'm going to go over my tag and we'll stamp our sentiment. I chose Snow Much Thanks. I'm going to stamp it with VersaFine Onyx Black ink. I am not going to do that. I'm going to stamp it with Versamark ink. And then I'll go over it with some white embossing powder. And then we went ahead and melted that until it was nice and glossy. And so our sentiment is nice and bold against that black. I like that. Okay, we're going to take some foam tape and add it to our white snowbank. We're just measuring it and then trimming off the excess. After we have that adhered, I went ahead and adhered my igloo and my little penguin. Next, there's some snowflakes in the stamp set, and I wanted to bring in a little bit more color in the background. So I'm going to be using a color that's pretty close to the pattern paper. It's one of my little mini ink cubes. I'm going to ink up 3 different sized snowflakes, and we're going to stamp around our background. Now technically you could do this first before you add your tag, but this worked out just fine. After my snowflakes are stamped, I'm going to take some, it's like a light teal blue and white baker's twine. I'm going to wrap it around 3 times, but I'm not going to tie a bow. I'm going to tie a knot on the inside of the card, and this way there's no bow. Not today. And I did take a piece and add it to my tag up there. But that finishes off that card. Okay, card number 3, we're going to make a snowman card. And I'm going to take 2 of the snowmans. One of them has the little earmuffs on, and then the other one has a scarf with a little hat. I'm going to stamp them using Memento ink. There's a little bit more coloring involved, so I switched inks. I'm going to use my Copic markers, color them in, and then I also fussy cut them out. Once they're ready to go, I'm going to fishtail the end of this pattern paper. It's a 2-inch strip, and then I'll do the same with this pattern paper. This is a 1/2-inch strip. And when I colored in my little snowman, I kind of went with colors that coordinated with the paper pad. For my card base, I'll be using the light blue, and I'm just kind of figuring out my placement before I adhere. This way I know what to pop up and what not to. I thought we needed a little more red in there, so I'm going to take 2 circle dies. I'm going to layer them both together, and I'm going to create a super thin frame with white cardstock. I'm just going to tape them together, make sure they're evenly spaced, that way my frame is nice and even. After we have this die cut, we're going to color it in. I'm going to use one of the red Copic markers I used to color in my snowman, and I thought we'd better use the chisel end. It's a lot easier, but I'm just going to color this in. This way all the colors kind of meld better together. Mold better together. I don't think meld's a word. Okay, once my frame's done, we're going to add some glue behind here and add that to our circle. Sometimes little touches like this just really make it stand out. We'll go ahead and place that, making sure it's nice and centered. Okay. We're going to take our first fishtail and add this directly to our card base with our tape runner. We'll trim off the top here. Next, I'll take the 1/2-inch stripe pattern paper. I'm going to use my tape runner and adhere that to the circle. After that's adhered, we can flip this entire circle over, and then I'm going to add foam tape behind here. And then we'll place that back on our card base along with our little snowman. For my sentiment, I'm going to use one of the cut apart sheets that came in the 6x6 paper pad. This one is so cute. It says, "Baby, it's cold outside." I just fussy cut around it. We're going to add some foam tape behind, and then this can be our sentiment for our little snowman. For finishing touches, I'm going to take some of the glossy accents. Oh no, I'm going to take the white gel pen that came in this month's kit. Now, this is a Jelly Roll white gel pen, and I'm just adding some white accents to my little snowman. This kind of makes them pop a little bit more. And I have to tell you, I'm so used to my Uniball white gel pen that using this was a little bit different. It's a little bit more of a finer tip. So it took me a little while to get to drawing. Okay, now we're going to take our glossy accents and go over the little earmuffs, and then we did go over the little snowman's noses. And as I got that done, I thought, we'll go over the cold in our sentiment too. We'll give that a little bit of glossiness. We'll just trace around there. And then that completes that card. Love those little happy snowmen. Okay, moving along, card number 5. I cut out a panel with pattern paper that's 4 inches by 5 1/4. Next, I'm going to take a piece of white cardstock and cut out a scallop border. I did trim down a 1/2-inch strip of the blue pattern paper. It was just a solid blue. The reverse side has pattern paper. Now, in the stamp set, there's an X, and I had no idea what the X was for, but I'm going to use it as a cross-stitch guide. So I'm going to stamp the X 4 times in a row with Versamark ink. Now, with this kit, I always want to do something a little bit different. That's why I used typically you would thread your needle through the little pom-poms and create a little garland, but I wanted to do something different. So I'm taking my pad that was in my Mini Misty. I'm taking my craft pick and I'm going to punch holes at the end of each one of the X's. After we have that done, we're going to thread our needle with the string or the thread that came in this month's kit. I grabbed one of the larger needles. I thread that through and I'll trim it, but I wanted it thicker. So I'm going to do it one more time. This way my thread strand is 4, almost like embroidery floss, so it's a little bit thicker. This is tricky when you cross stitch, when you have double layer of thread, because it has more tendency to knot up. But I just make sure I hold the thread a little bit tight each time I thread it through. But I'll secure the end with some score tape, and we'll trim off the tails here. And when I cross stitch, I always go diagonal all the way, and then I'll flip around and crisscross the other way instead of doing one at a time. So I'm just going to go over and under, creating some diagonal stitch lines. And then I'll do the opposite way, and then I have X's all along my little strip here. Okay, to secure the end of this one, I'm going to secure it with some more score tape. And then we have some fun little dimension with cross stitch lines there. If you want to go across this entire panel, I think that would look cute too. I'll remove the release paper off of my score tape. Next, I'm going to use my tape runner, and we're going to adhere that to the scalloped white border. And then I did use one of the cut aparts that says the world changes when it snows. I just popped all 3 of these elements up with foam tape. And then for finishing touches, I'm going to add a few of my clear sequins. So something a little different that you can do with the little X in the stamp set, and also the thread in your the thread needle that came in this month's kit. Just some more options. Using my glue, I'm just going to secure 2 to the top, and then we'll add 3 to the bottom. And that finishes off card number 5. Super cute just because card. Okay, for card number 6, I have all my elements ready to go. I cut out 2 strips of the pattern paper, and then we're going to use the larger taupe colored snowflake background. I'm going to start off by using, this is like the paper that came in the kit. It's almost like a burlap look. Then I'll adhere a striped paper right over it. We're going to make a side folding card for this. I already stamped my little snowman and colored him in. I chose the snowman that was holding the present. And then I did die cut out 2 snowbanks. Now if you don't have a snowbank or a hillside border die, you could just use your scissors and create waves. I think it would create the same effect. Next, I'm going to add my snowflake pattern paper. Lovely. Okay, we're going to adhere our first snowbank directly to our card base. I'm just kind of figuring out which snowbank looks better. After we have that one adhered, I'm going to take some foam tape and add our second snowbank. Now the edge of the snowbank is going to be sitting against that striped paper, and it kind of was off balance for me. So I'm going to take my snowman and place him right over that little bottom corner there. That way it looks a little more finished. After we have him adhered, we're going to stamp our sentiment. For this one, I chose "Thanks for my gift." Since our little snowman was holding a gift, I thought it'd be perfect. I did cut out a fishtail banner, and I'll stamp my sentiment all the way to the right of that. And then we'll add a piece of foam tape, and we'll tuck him right underneath our little snowman. I thought this is great after Christmas card kit. Great for sending cards for all the thank yous. Okay, finishing touches. I'm taking some Nuvo Simply White crystal drops, and I'm adding some snowfall to our background. I'm adding actually to the center of each one of those snowflakes, just to give it a more balanced look. And that completes card number 6. Okay, now we're going to move along to card number 7. For this card, we're going to use our little penguin guy. Just love him. We'll stamp him on some white cardstock. And there's a little heart we're going to stamp in our little penguin's hand. After we have, because it looks like he's actually holding it up. I thought that was too cute. I colored him in, and now I'm just fussy cutting him out. For this card, we're going to be using the darker blue cardstock in the kit. I'm going to create a frame using my double stitch rectangle dies. Now my frame is it's going to leave me about 3/4 of an inch around my card base, so it's a little bit on the smaller side. You can see the size here. We're going to take our pencil and trace around the inside window, because I thought we would stamp our sentiment directly on our card base. My sentiment for this card, I chose, "I'm snow in love with you." Just going over this with my anti-static powder tool. We're going to heat emboss with some white embossing powder. Just stamp our sentiment towards the top, and then add our white embossing powder, and I went ahead and melted it. Now I didn't bother erasing my pencil lines because I didn't think it would be that noticeable. Plus I'm going to add glitter directly to my card base, so I found it easier to keep those pencil lines there. Now to create a shaker, I'm going to add a piece of acetate to the back of my frame. I'll go ahead and add some foam tape behind my entire frame, and since we are adding glitter, I made sure that I tucked that foam tape together at the seams really well. That way I don't have no escaping glitter. Okay, for this card we're going to use the Avery Coarse glitter. We're just going to pour some over our sentiment in our penciled area, and I'm only doing one layer of foam tape. I thought the glitter was pretty fine. And then I'm going to shake my card a little bit to flatten it. Hindsight, I should have went over my acetate with my anti-static powder tool, because the glitter had static and it stuck a little bit. But we adhered our shaker frame, and we have a nice little fun snowbank down there that's super shiny. And then last but not least, all we have to do is add our little penguin that's holding the cute little heart. And I love the red against this color. I think it's just fantastic. And I'm not going to add any bells and whistles. I think that glitter kind of speaks for itself. But it's actually not on the thicker side even. I think it'd be very easy to mail. But that completes that card. Okay, moving along, card number 8. I have a piece of vellum that I trimmed down to 4 inches by 5 1/4. I went over it with my anti-static powder bag. Next, I have the snowflake in the stamp set. I'm going to stamp the snowflake all over this background. After we have our snowflake filled in, I'm going to go over the top of it with white embossing powder. Using my heat gun, I'll go ahead and melt that. Now I had quite a bit of open areas, so I took the heart that was in the stamp set, and I'm going to do the same exact thing, but I'm going to fill in all those open areas. After we have that done, I'll just go over it with white embossing powder, and again, we'll go ahead and melt it. So it creates a real fun background. Now I flipped the vellum upside down, and using one of my red Copic markers, I'm going to fill in my little hearts. I found it easier to fill it in behind the vellum after it's heat embossed. This way it just looks cleaner. Okay, I cut out a frame using 2 of my square dies, and this frame actually fits my cut apart sheet beautifully. The cut apart sheet says, "A snowflake is winter's butterfly." I just glued my frame to my sentiment panel here. We're going to trim it down a little bit. Next, I have the red and white pattern paper. It's a 2-inch strip that I adhered directly to the center of my card base. After that's adhered, I added foam tape behind my sentiment. We'll place our vellum on our card base, and then I'm going to add my sentiment to my vellum. We can flip this over, and then using my glue, I'm going to go over the center of each one of the snowflakes, and then also behind my tape strips, and this way it adheres beautifully to my card base. For bells and whistles, I wanted a little sparkle, so I'm using some of my red gems. I added them to the center of each one of those snowflakes, and then I think there's a lot going on in this card, and I think that looks so pretty. So that finishes it off. Okay, moving along, card number 9. I have this real pretty pattern paper with the snowflakes. Again, I'm adhering a snowbank to the very bottom. Using my paper trimmer, we're going to trim down a panel that's 4 inches by 5 1/4. It's going to leave me a little bit of a white border on my card base. Next, we're going to stamp our sentiment. This one says Snow Much, and it's in a beautiful font. I'm going to stamp it with my Versamark ink. After we have that stamped, I'm using white embossing powder, and we'll go ahead and heat emboss our sentiment. Next, I colored in both of my penguins, and then I did stamp the word thanks on a piece of white cardstock. I just blocked it off. Next, we're going to adhere this panel to a panel I created with some dark blue cardstock that I had in my stash. Next, we're going to add some foam squares behind each of our little penguins. We'll adhere them to our little snowbank. Okay, I'm going to add some foam tape behind my thanks sentiment, and then I did fishtail the left end here, and we're going to place this on the right side of our card. We're going to create a snowfall background, so just to bring out some of that white in our snowbank, I'm going to use some Nuvo Simply White crystal drops, and we're going to go over the center of each one of our little snowflakes. And then I'm also going to take glossy accents and dot our little penguin's eyes, and we're going to go over their little beaks, and then I thought we'd create a nice little glossy patch that little guy's skating on. So we're just adding quite a bit to the bottom portion where their feet are, and when that dries, it's going to dry nice and glossy like a little ice bank. And that completes that card. Okay, for my final card today, I'm going to use one of the cut up part sheets as my sentiment. I'm just going to cut off the trees at the very top part. This one says Happy Winter Season. After we trim that, we're going to keep that reverse side there. But I did cut out another snowbank. And again, you don't need snowbanks, guys, or border dies. You could just use your scissors and create a little wave on there. But I added a snowbank to the bottom of my sentiment panel here. Now we're going to do a little layering with each one of our pattern papers. We'll put the snowflake paper on the very top. Next, we'll add our little like burlap type pattern paper. We'll go ahead and add our little reverse side of our cut apart sheet here, and then I'll add the red and white pattern paper. Now I'm going to carefully lift these up, and it's separated a bit. But I'm going to use my paper trimmer to trim off all the excess. This way I know it's straight. And I got lucky. Sometimes when I do this, it sticks to my paper trimmer, so I got really lucky. Okay, after we have that done, I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to fix that. It keeps wanting to come apart. I'm going to follow the shape of the hillside from our cut apart sheet, just to give it a little bit something different. Okay, for this card we're going to use the lighter blue cardstock. I created a card base with it, and then I also used a 4" by 5¼ piece of the pattern paper. The light blue pattern. It's a tone on tone. I just adhered that to my card base. Now here, I'm doing a switcheroo. I wanted the red up higher, so I just flipped that little panel entirely over. This way I can take some red and white baker's twine and tie a bow to the right. And to me that looks a little bit more nicer. I'll take this panel and add some foam tape behind the entire back. This is going to help secure it together too. And then we're going to finish it off with some clear sequins for a little sparkle. And that completes card number 10, guys. Thanks for sticking with me through these videos. I know they run a little bit long, but if you do want to see close-ups, I encourage you to go visit my blog. There's still shots of each one of the cards over there. I love hearing your comments, and they are so uplifting. Oh my goodness, I just appreciate them so much. But here's a look at all 10 cards that I made with the Simon Says Stamp January 2019 card kit. My goodness, the kit did sell out, guys. But good news about the Simon kits is if you're interested in the stamp set, it is sold separately. If you would like the die, that's also sold separately also, along with the 6x6 paper pad. But so if you can't get your hands on the kit, there is options available out there in case you want to check it out. But links for that will be down below. But I hope you enjoyed the cards that I made today. I wish you a lovely day, guys, a lovely weekend, and we will see you again real soon. Bye-bye.